Good morning and welcome to another edition of Our Town on 94.9 and 99.1 The River and AM 1240 KDEC. Darren Swinson with you again on a Thursday morning. Our Town, as always, brought to you by the good folks at Decorah Bank and Trust. A little later on in the program, we'll talk COVID-19 vaccine rollout in Allamakee County. Cheryl Darling-Mooney will join us to discuss that. And it's Education Week on Our Town this week. A little later on in the program, we'll talk to Allamakee School Superintendent Jay Mathis, but we'll kick off the program this morning by talking with Decorah School Superintendent Mark Lane. We'll do that on Our Town on 94.9 and 99.1 The River and AM 1240 KDEC. Time now for our monthly conversation with Decorah School Superintendent Mark Lane as we talk about a variety of issues. And Mark, of course, this airs on a Thursday morning, and as of today, a vaccination clinic for staff and active substitutes in your district is taking place related to the COVID-19 vaccine. I know in the literature you send out in district, you mentioned that this was going to be a possibility late last week, and here we are 4 days later, and it's happening. How did it come together so quickly?
It was probably about a week ago today, last Wednesday, when Winneshiek County Public Health contacted the school district and just made us aware that the opportunity to do a clinic was a viable option. We weren't exactly sure when at that time the county would have the supply necessary to serve our school district and then St. Ben's, the K-8 Catholic, pre-K-8 Catholic school here in town. And then also Crossroads Academy is a private institution that serves special education students from Decorah and then other surrounding districts. And so we started laying the groundwork for what that day could look like at the end of the week last week, and wanted to at least get the possibility of that occurring out to the community on Friday last week in our weekly message. And then on Monday, we had the confirmation in the evening from Winneshiek Public Health that we were going to have the capacity to have the clinic on Thursday. We know it's not ideal to go into a remote learning day on that day for our families, but we feel a sense of urgency to get that first round of vaccine out to our employees, and we're hopeful that side effects from the first round of vaccination are minimal for folks, but doing it on a day right before we have either a weekend or a break it puts us in a position, if there are some folks that have an adverse reaction or not feeling well, then we're not scrambling to find substitutes then the next day right afterwards. And so it's taken coordination and getting, we'll have about 280 people receive the vaccination tomorrow. There's a requirement for those folks to stay on site, to be observed for at least 15 minutes to make sure that they don't have any adverse reaction. If somebody does have a minor reaction, they're able to stay on site, and we've got some contingency plans for providing an alternative space for people if they need a little bit longer time in observation, and appreciate Winneshiek County Public Health. And then there's some folks that have volunteered to administer. So I think we'll have probably about 10 nurses on site checking people in and administering vaccines throughout the day, and are excited to be able to work with St. Ben's and with Crossroads that we partner with on a number of things to get their staff involved as well.
When you look at this, if you look back 2-3 months ago, would you call this maybe even better than a best case scenario to get your staff vaccinated this quickly?
I guess, yeah. I mean, I'm really excited. I think when we first started hearing about a vaccine and that was starting to be shipped to places, I think in an administrative meeting, I remember saying to people, gosh, if we could have a vaccination by sometime in March, that'd be great. And to be, sitting on February 11th is really exciting to me. Just the logistics of getting vaccines to our state and then out to our 99 counties and then into ARMS. We're excited to be a part of phase 1B, and we're pleased that we were able to be a part of coordinating these 280 doses.
And related to COVID-19, your most recent update from the district, the numbers probably add a little bit more of a comfortable level as time goes by. That's my interpretation from the outside looking in. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yes, we've been really pleased with where our numbers have been. When we do every Tuesday and Thursday, we kind of do our dipstick measure of where are things at. And since we've returned from break, we've seen a pretty stable number of both the number of individuals that are needing to quarantine or those that might need to isolate because of a positive test. We've stayed right around about 24 to 26 individuals needing to be away from school for either quarantining or because they've had a positive test. And our number of people out with a positive test has typically been only about 2 to 4 each week. And that's more stable than it was in that window of time between Thanksgiving and winter break, and significantly lower as well. And I think, that's reflected in our county data as well. But I think too, just again, it goes back to the things we've tried to do consistently since the very beginning of the school year. Our school board instituted a mask requirement in all buildings at the October board meeting, and we've really maintained that stable expectation since then and continue to do that. And so I think we've just gotten into a routine with staff and students that has helped us to be as successful as we can be.
And the fact of the matter is, I look at it from the co-curricular activity end of things. The sports have gone on. You had speech contest taking place this week. The fine arts may look a little different, but they have gone on as well. Are you proud of the way that the district has taken an attitude of let's find a way to provide these opportunities for young people?
Yes, and I would go all the way back to conversations that we had, and I say we, really it was Kim Shepard and Adam Riley, as we were approaching graduation in the spring and then into June. We brought students together, we listened to student voice, and our students wanted to experience as close to a normal of a graduation ceremony as they possibly could. And so we pushed graduation back into the summer. We did it outside, but we tried to facilitate that in a way that was as close to a feeling of normalcy as we could. And I think that really set the stage for then the planning we did over the summer of what do we have to do to try and create normal school experiences, athletic activities and contests, concerts, speech, those things that students value and that create memories for kids. And so I think we've worked really hard to try and do that. And yeah, I'm absolutely proud of our students. I'm proud of our coaches and sponsors and our activities directors and our principals and our teachers. And I'm appreciative to our community for understanding, why we've limited crowd size. There are people who traditionally have come to events that have had to maybe watch it and stream it on YouTube. But it has really, I think it's all been in an effort to keep students at the forefront, to give them opportunities to compete, to participate, to engage in the things that they want to engage in and create, those memories. As a parent, I have a 5th grade son who's in band, and my wife and I were able to go to his first ever band concert. He had grandparents that watched it on YouTube, and I was just really amazed given the nature of this school year, just what a great job our 5th grade band did in performing that evening. And I think it just shows the resilience of kids, the dedication of kids, and the hard work of our teachers. And as a parent, really appreciated getting to sit in the auditorium, socially distanced with my mask on, but getting to watch my son Cal play his trumpet with the 5th grade band for the first time.
Decorah School Superintendent Mark Lane joining us and making an awkward transition from a global pandemic to politics. Senate File 159, your thoughts?
I think I've made my thoughts pretty clear. And honestly, I'm proud of Iowa public schools. My dad is an educator. My mom is an educator. I went to an elementary school where there were 3 Mrs. Lanes. My mom, my grandma, and my aunt all taught in the elementary school where I went to school. And so to see what I would consider a deprioritization, and in some ways, sometimes what feels like an attack on public education in Iowa is really, really disheartening to me. Because I think our schools, and I think we've demonstrated this, I think our schools are the hearts of our community. When the pandemic happened and the state shut down, we handed out thousands of meals every Friday. When there's a football game on a Friday night, when there's a musical in November, we are the place where communities rally. And what is proposed in Senate File 159 on paper can appear very minimal. It can appear to be a few $1 million, and it's right now only impacting a few school districts in our state that on paper are deemed to be in need of assistance. This isn't the assistance those schools need. Based on our system, yeah, they are demonstrating that they might need assistance, but I think there are things about those districts that we could invest money in, and that we could invest time and learning around that would assist those districts in meeting the challenges that they face. And so, I went back recently into the 70s, looking at something, it used to be called allowable growth, and now it's called state supplemental aid. And really it's what our district, what our state allows or commits to growth in funding in schools. And that fluctuates from year to year. But for 40 years, it's been a significant downward trend. And the last 2 years are the lowest 5-year average for what I can find data, back to when I was born in 1972. And the position that puts us in is thinking about how do we do more with less. It puts us in a position of losing employees. It puts us in a position where it's hard to be competitive with especially for support positions like our bus drivers, like our special education associates who are integral to our success. When they look and they can see that they can go make $2 or $3 more an hour outside of education, it's hard for them to say, I'm going to keep working at school in this really hard, challenging job. And so we have to be able to remain competitive to compete with people in other professions for talent and for a workforce. And so I think those are the things that I will always advocate for is what I think is best for our school district, because I think that's best for our community.
Related to the schools that right now are listed in this bill, I believe there's 34 school buildings in 18 school districts that are deemed by the federal government as underperforming, or whatever the vernacular is. in Northeast Iowa, we probably can't relate to a lot of this because Northeast Iowa education is what we're used to. But you've worked in metro areas where you can relate to this a little bit better. Of those schools that are listed as underperforming right now, what specifically should be done to get those schools to the level where they're expected to be at related to the Iowa education standards?
I think two things that stand out to me if you look at that list of schools is something that some are rural and some are urban, but something they have in common is a significantly higher free and reduced lunch percentage than typical schools in Iowa. So they're schools that are in communities that are impacted by poverty. There are also a significant number of schools on that list that have a higher percentage of students who are learning English, so they're English language learners, than the typical school in Iowa. And so when we think about how do we improve results in schools that are impacted by poverty, that are impacted by the percentage of students not speaking English, I think we have to think about what are the supports, or in what ways are those students being underserved. And so it takes years. It can take years for a student who's learning English to develop the language skills, to learn and keep pace with their English first peers. In the building where I was a principal in Urbandale, we served a population in our building of families that came from refugee camps in Africa, from Liberia, from Ghana, from South Sudan. We had students who had been in a refugee camp in Africa, and within 2 weeks, they were now plopped into a classroom in Urbandale, Iowa, and maybe speaking no English, and they were 5 years old in kindergarten. I've seen those students learn and grow and become, by third and fourth and fifth grade, they're where they need to be with their peers. But that was, I mean, honestly, it was harder work for them and for the teachers of those students than it might have been for a student whose first language was English and who had never experienced civil war and been in a refugee camp. And so, you know, having the counseling services for someone that's dealing with post-traumatic stress, having teachers that support the English language development of those students, but then also those parents, having programs that allow those parents to access school and be connected to school is really critical. And so I think we have to be creative about, you know, those aren't things that maybe schools traditionally do. And it's maybe not what, you know, when I went to Morningside College in Sioux City, I didn't receive a great deal of training about how to serve students that might not speak English in my classroom, but I had to develop those skills and I had to learn it very quickly because Iowa is changing and the typical student body in Iowa is changing. And so we have to develop the ways to serve those kids.
Decorah School Superintendent Mark Lane joining us. And the question of judging how a school is performing has always been interesting to me, because as a district, you want to see how you're doing and if you're meeting the needs of the community from an educational perspective. But I look at myself as a student. I mean, I had plenty of good teachers in the Decorah community school system, but I was lazier than heck, and I didn't get all that good at grades. That's not the teacher's fault. That was my fault for being lazy, even though I wouldn't have admitted that when I was 16, 17, or 18. In your mind, what's a fair way to go about judging how a school system is doing? Because there's so many layers to it that are frankly outside of a district's control.
Yeah. I guess I would say it needs to be multifaceted, and it shouldn't just be one moment in time, right? We should pay attention to student achievement, and we should look at things like the Iowa test, the Iowa statewide assessment of student progress. Honestly, something like that an annual standardized test. As an educator, I don't think that tells me a whole lot about one individual student, but across the system, I can learn about how our system is doing in serving all kids by looking at something like the statewide assessment. It gives us one picture. At the elementary level, we conduct assessments around reading that are around fluency and comprehension. And we're thinking about, are students progressing towards becoming a fluent reader? Are they comprehending what they read? And we do that multiple times a year. And so that feeds into, again, well, at a grade level, what percentage of that grade level is reading at grade level expectations? And we're hoping that, with what we do with all students, that 80 to 90% of students, we're meeting their needs. The other thing that I think is really important for us to monitor are things around student engagement, like you were mentioning, Darren. If our students are sitting in classrooms where they're not actively engaged, where they don't feel a connection to what they're learning, I think sometimes what appears to be disinterest or being lazy might just be that, well, this isn't very exciting and I don't really see how this is relevant to my life at all. So I'm gonna check out up here and think about something else. And so, yeah, right, in any work, there's things that we don't want to do. And we ask kids to do things at school that maybe they don't want to do, but we just say, well, we just need to do it. But I think we can also do things that say to kids, what would be a more engaging way? What would be a more meaningful way for us to do this? And we should listen to that student voice, and we should engage them and have them hopefully take some ownership. And I think that drives a higher level of engagement. So we've talked about, and one of the things we're moving towards as a district is more strategic and purposeful ways of monitoring student engagement, of asking our students, what are we doing well as a district? What could we improve? Same thing with our staff. What is creating a connection to your work? What is making you feel engaged in your work? Because in my mind, an actively engaged teacher, somebody who really cares about their work and cares about kids, if they're excited about their work, then that bleeds over into students. And so we want to have engaged teachers. We want to know that our teachers feel connected to school, they feel supported, and that they feel like this is a good place to work. We want to know that students feel that way, and we want to know that parents feel that way. And so, we've tried to give opportunities for people to provide feedback in engaging in meaningful ways, and we'll continue to do that. And then last year we developed around our strategic plan areas that we say are most critical for us. We want to know about our student achievement. We want to know that our people are engaged. We want to know that we're using our financial resources well. We want to know that our schools are safe and that we're promoting well-being for people. And so what we're working towards now is developing, what are those ways we monitor that and we measure that?
And a couple more questions from Mark Lane. And I know a part of Senate File 159 eliminates the days you have to sit out if you transfer from one school to another. And that we often see that in athletics, and we could do a whole show on that. And that's a different conversation for a different day. But I was asked this question because I honestly didn't know. And that's why I have the forum to ask smarter people than me, like yourself. If parents in one district want to enroll their kids to another district, what power does the home district have to say no? Can you say no at all, or how does that process work?
Currently, you can say no. So there are deadlines. So currently for students that are in 1st through 12th grade, the deadline to submit an application for open enrollment is March 1st. So like right now, we're in the process of receiving open enrollment applications for the 21-22 school year. Those have to be into our office by March 1st. For students who are going to be entering kindergarten next year, the deadline isn't until September 1st. So right now, there's those two deadlines that are in Iowa code. There are some caveats to that. For example, there's something called continuation of placement. So if it's, let's say this past September, a family lived in the Decorah district and their student was in 6th grade going to the middle school here in Decorah. And they moved from Decorah into one of our neighboring districts. They then have the opportunity to say, well, I want to continue to have my child attend in Decorah. Okay. And that's called continuation of placement. So even though they've missed the deadline, because they moved, they could submit that paperwork, and their new home district would say, yep, we understand you want to continue to keep your child. That's in the best interest of the student. They have relationships. They've connected with that school district. So they approve that as a continuation of placement, and then that's allowed to happen. There's also some language in Iowa code where if a student is experiencing significant bullying or harassment and it's not a safe environment, and they want maybe a fresh start, or they want a different environment where they'll just feel more safe, if they can demonstrate that this is related to significant bullying and harassment, there are no deadlines and that can be approved. But if they can't demonstrate that that's happening, then that home district would be able to say, no, you've missed the deadline and there isn't this significant reason to say yes. So those are probably the main ways that are outside the scope of just the deadlines that people can apply for open enrollment. I think the intent of the law is to open that up. I think, as a sports fan over the last few years, I've watched what happens after every college football and basketball season, where it just all of a sudden it's like, okay, who's going to what school in college basketball? And I guess as a fan of sports, I've never really appreciated, watching that happen. I think it's just not in the best interest, and you can't keep track of who plays for what team. I would really hate to see something like that happen with sports in Iowa, where it just seems like, where athletes just bounce from district to district, maybe because they're upset with playing time, or they've had a disagreement with a coach, or I see there's even the potential of, I'm going to play football here because this school has a really good football team, but I'm going to go to the neighboring district because they're better in basketball. Like that, to me, that's just not in the spirit of high school athletics, to be able to, from season to season, think, well, where can I go and have the best opportunity to win?
And the transfer portal is confusing enough, even without it trickling down to the high school level. Anything else the public needs to know, as long as you got the forum this morning, Mark?
I guess I would say I've gotten a few questions around, with the governor's proclamation last week, around our mask policy. Our board passed our mask policy back in early October, what it is currently, and we'll continue to operate under the policy that we've had in place, where masks are required inside our buildings. We think that's a huge part of what has kept us engaged in in-person learning and what we want to provide. As a conference with basketball, we're continuing, and wrestling. Right now, we're continuing to operate in the structures that we've had in place. And I saw the Athletic Association put out some information about the tournaments coming up. And so, we'll start having conversation about what spring sports will look like for fan attendance, and we'll communicate that out as soon as we can.
Mark, appreciate the time and the knowledge as always. Look forward to our conversation next month.
Awesome. Thank you, Darren, for everything. Appreciate being able to share.
Mark Lane, Decorah Schools Superintendent. Time now for our monthly conversation with Allamakee Community School District Superintendent Jay Mathis. And Jay, we'll start with some conversation regarding proposed legislation at the State House right now. Of course, Senate File 159, which would create a voucher system for parents of students that are in underperforming school districts or school buildings by federal standards, to potentially use some tax dollars to transfer their students into a private setting. That, of course, getting a lot of conversation in the educational field. As of right now, what are your thoughts on that proposed legislation that has gotten out of one chamber at the State House?
Well, not surprisingly, Darren, I'm certainly opposed to the spending of public money for private use and private education in this case. You know, public schools serve all students, and we are held to high expectations and are expected to serve every student that lives in our borders or chooses to go to school here. And we don't get to pick and choose, and we take care of special needs students and every student that comes through our doors. And it's just and it doesn't the vouchers, I'm not afraid that you know, more people would choose to go elsewhere, but in the larger cities and so on, it's it's a shift of rural dollars to the metro areas, because most of your private school students live in the metro areas and they're paying their own education. We start providing vouchers, and that's usually, Darren, too, where most of the underperforming schools are. And so we start shifting or having to add a bunch of funds. It's just going to water down ours. And so the two concerns is as I mentioned, moving public funds to private enterprise, and the other one is a shift of rural tax dollars going to the urban communities, and I don't like either one of those things.
The people that are supporting this piece of legislation are saying there's only 34 school buildings in the state that fit that underperforming category regarding federal standards, and it really won't affect at least a lot of people in Northeast Iowa, because most districts in Northeast Iowa are performing up to standards set by the federal government. What is your response to that claim or that statement?
Yeah, good question. Well, I alluded to part of it is, you know, there's only so much tax money out there, and if you start sending it to those areas, then it's going away from us. And so that's one thing. And the other thing is kind of like the viewpoint, you know, not to throw another controversial subject in there, but I like to compare it like with the NRA, and most of the time they, you know, they don't want to start having limitations on magazine capacity sizes or anything, because once the foot is in the door, they're afraid of how far it's going to go. And that's another part of my concern with this, is it's seemingly, or I shouldn't say seemingly, but they're proposing and arguing that, well, this won't have any impact on us. Yes, it will. Eventually, this is one way to get their foot in the door for vouchers for a lot more than just the underperforming schools. And again, it's just most of those schools are not held. They don't have the same reporting requirements that we have. They aren't held to the same level of scrutiny, and it's an unequal playing surface at that point.
Related to the public schools in the state that are in that underperforming category, what's the best way to improve those schools in your mind?
Gosh, that's a great question. You know, the state is working at allocating extra funds to get the professional development. A lot of times, you know, a lot of the test scores that those state report cards refer to, it's been fairly well proven that those test scores have a real strong correlation with socioeconomic status. And so, yeah, it's not always a factor of the schools being doing bad work. I think some of those schools probably work the hardest, but a lot of it is a function of the students that come through their doors, and so I guess, you know, the argument by the people that are in favor of this would be, well, then let's some competition. There's research that's been cited that says that bringing in private schools to those communities doesn't change the situation or those test scores. So I don't think that's the answer.
Walk-on Superintendent Jay Mathis joining us. And Jay, what in your mind is the fairest way to judge how a school is doing? Because you've brought up a lot of things that affect how a school can perform. Is there a fair way to for people outside of a school building to judge whether or not a district is doing as well as it can in its mission?
Yeah, that's an excellent question as well, and a deep one, Darren. But there's, you know, test scores are one thing. You know, a lot of times the way to measure how successful a school district is doing is looking at their open enrollment rates to see if they've got, you know, more students coming in than out, or more students going out than in. And sometimes that's a geography type of a thing. Other things are test scores. You know, the state, the Department of Ed, has been tasked for about the past almost 10 years of putting out a state report card for each school district, which is where those schools get ranked. And you go to the Department of Education website, you can find state report cards there that looks at attendance rates and graduation rates and testing data. And so that's probably your best way of being able to do some compare and contrast, is what's already there that our Department of Education has put together. But usually the best way is just, you know, what's the satisfaction of your public, and usually with a local school board, the school board members certainly are made aware of concerns that patrons would have in a school district, and so a lot of those things probably get addressed at the local level as far as the performance of a district.
Related to this proposed piece of legislation, Senate File 159, it's been obvious from the outside looking in, there has been a political boxing match between Terrace Hill and the Des Moines Public School District. Really, that has been made public, and it's probably been brought to the surface when education has been dealing with COVID-19. Do you think that boxing match is kind of holding all education in the state hostage because of a major school district, the largest in the state, and the governor's office not being able to get along?
Yeah, I couldn't say it any better, Darren. That's really what's going on, and there's more bills this year that are things that have been tried before and rejected, and it's unfortunate because you know, and we're in a less than ideal situation, obviously, with the pandemic, and it's really brought some other consequences besides the unpleasantries of extra cleaning and wearing of masks and those types of things. It's really brought a big divide between, like you said, the governor's office, Des Moines Public District, teacher unions, and a lot of entities that we really need working together as opposed to fighting each other. And it seems like some of the legislation is pointed at trying to hurt the Des Moines district and its it could potentially hurt all of us. And so I hope some of those things, and I have to trust that our governor and legislature will, and I think they will. I trust that they will look at what's right for kids and for our state.
A couple more questions here for Allamakee School Superintendent Jay Mathis. And Jay, getting back to the local level, obviously everyone's still dealing with COVID-19, but the management among staff and students in your district, numbers seemingly improving on that end of things. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, we just feel very fortunate that what we're doing is working, that we're able to have school every day. We have done 3 virtual snow days now, and that seems to have gone fairly well, considering it's something that's new and we hadn't done before. We're hoping the legislature will allow us to expand that and not expand it, but actually be able to do it in the future. And so, yeah, we're happy with that. We are waiting anxiously for our first, dose of vaccine for our employees. Some have gotten it from outside sources, but I think this week we'll start getting some here from public health, which we appreciate. Hey, and if I could throw in a shameless plug here, I wanted to mention when we talk about COVID and our response, the folks over at Stanley Engineering Fasteners in Decorah, Scott Milborn and his staff, they donated several boxes. I mean, big, huge cardboard boxes, so literally thousands of face masks and PPE supplies to our district in 2 different occasions. And so we sure appreciate that, and our taxpayers appreciate it, and every little bit helps, and we sure appreciate that. So thanks for letting me sneak that in.
That's not shameless at all. That's thanking people doing good for the community there, and we got no problem with talking people like that up at all. You mentioned vaccinations, and educators in the state are going to be towards the front of the line of people that are eligible to get a COVID-19 vaccination. I know some districts have been in talks that they'll have an emergency day off from school to hold a big clinic once there's enough vaccine to go around and vaccinate all the educators. Where is your district at in regards to getting all of the people that work in your district vaccinated?
Yeah, well, we've been working closely with public health. We've got about 70%, if I'm not mistaken, of our staff that signed up to get a vaccine when it's available. We've sorted our folks, right, wrong, or indifferent, from oldest to youngest, and we probably won't get public health isn't getting enough doses at once to probably do all of us at the same time. It sounds like, they might have 15 or 20 doses this week to give to our staff, and so we'll just kind of go through our list, and whenever they can be here to give those, and so that might work better anyway, rather than having everyone done at the same time. And from what my wife, who's in the health field, has said, that more of the reaction has been on the second dose, and so yeah, we'll have to see. But we're not. Originally, we talked about, well, let's do it on a Friday, not to try to spoil anyone's weekend, but I guess that's kind of what it would look like. But right now, whenever we can get vaccine in, we'll gladly give it. And if people are ill the next day, then they'll stay home, and we'll soldier through that like we have the rest of the school year, Darren.
Anything else we need to pass on to the public this morning?
No, just another big thanks to, I really am so proud of my staff, administration, teachers, support staff, our drivers and cooks and custodians, for their efforts in making this, and for our parents and the students have been just fantastic of making the most of a strange school year, and you know, I guess I'll wish good luck to our winter teams as they get ready for tournament play here, and hope that things continue to go well, that they can get all their games in.
And really every day of education and being around people is a gift here in 2020, 2021, isn't it?
That's right. That's absolutely right, Darren. Good way to look at it.
Jay, appreciate the time as always. Look forward to our next conversation next month.
Thanks, Darren. You too.
Jay Mathis, Allamakee School Superintendent, joining us. Having a conversation this morning with Shirley Darling-Mooney from Allamakee County Public Health, and we're talking about the COVID-19 vaccine rollout. And Shirley, the vaccines are here, and the process of getting the public vaccinated probably will never go as smoothly or as quickly as the public wants it to go. But give us a general update on where Allamakee County is out in, or is at, in terms of vaccination.
Well, right now we've been notified that for the rest of February and the beginning probably week of March, we are receiving 300 doses a week to allocate to our partners and to utilize ourselves through community and home care in getting our residents vaccinated. We partner with Hardig Drug, Prescription Shop Pharmacy, Veterans Memorial Hospital Medical Clinic, and Gunderson Health System here in the county in Waukon and Lansing. And so between us, we kind of visit quite frequently, and we can allocate doses in 100 dose increments. And so we've been utilizing our partners to try and reach that 65 and older age group. And then what we keep for ourselves, we allocate most of it out. We keep some for ourselves so that we can work on those tier groups that are in our phase 1B priority. Right now we're working on tier 1. And in tier 1, it includes first responders like firefighters, police officers, child welfare, social workers, PK through 12 school staff, early childhood education, and child care providers. So that's a wide range of people. And so when you look at the population that's 65 and older in our county, which I believe is right around 24%, and then add in this tier group, it's going to take quite a long time at 300 doses a week to get everyone that wants the vaccine covered. As
for perhaps getting a place in line or signing up for the vaccine, are there places for people to do that, or are we at that point yet?
Well, from what I understand, both Hardig and Prescription Shop, you can go onto their website. And while you can't actually make an appointment at that time, you can, I believe, be waitlisted, and they will contact you. With the medical providers such as Gunderson and Veterans Memorial Hospital Medical Clinic, they are looking at that patient population, and they are contacting the patient themselves when their time comes up and offering the vaccine to them at that time. So for those facilities, for the medical clinics, you do not need to call to schedule an appointment.
How many folks that have been vaccinated to this point in Allamakee County?
So out of our agency, we've looked at total of giving 900 or somewhere around 960 doses. And our partners have given doses as well. So we are getting there. We've got a long way to go. I believe Hardig Drug and Prescription Shop have each been able to give 100 doses. We've got the Veterans Memorial Hospital Medical Clinic and the Gunderson Clinic as well, working on their doses at this time. Prescription Shop has a scheduled clinic coming up, so they will give another 100 doses. And we're continuing to work on that tier group to utilize our doses.
Are these all first doses, or have anyone in those groups received a second dose to this point?
Well, we've been working through, yes, we've been working through the tier group of healthcare workers, which was our initial response, and most of them are finishing up with booster doses at this time. So we're working on that, also on that tier group to involve like fire, police, teachers. They're working on their first doses.
All right. What is your overall message to the public as they wait for their turn, wait for their spot in line to get vaccinated related to COVID-19 right now?
We're asking people to do the same things that we've been asking for months, to mask up, wash your hands, practice social distancing, and to please have patience with us. All vaccine that comes to Allamakee County at this time is coming through our office, and it is a coordinated effort with all of our partners to get that out in the quickest and most efficient manner possible. We're not able to please everyone, so that need for patience is very high at this point.
And just to reiterate the message, obviously we've been dealing with the COVID-19 situation as a society for around a year now, and probably patience is the last thing we want to hear, but perhaps the first thing that we need to hear as a public. Would that be fair to say?
That it would be very fair. I believe I was interviewed, I believe it was maybe end of March last year, and my message hasn't changed all that much in what we need to first do to stay safe. But now we're just adding in that patience on waiting for that vaccine. We would love to get a lot more vaccine. I know that we can get it out as soon as it's in our hands, but unfortunately it's just not in our hands.
And is it a case that once you do get that vaccine, you feel that you have the system in place and the infrastructure in place that once you get the doses, the public, you'll get them into the arms of the public as soon as possible?
Yes, we have been planning and meeting and working on how we will distribute this vaccine since March. You know, you're planning for that. How are we going to best meet the needs of our population? So we've been working with our partners, our EMA, our hospitals, our law enforcement, pharmacies, and volunteers, all sorts of different groups to, you know, how, when we get the vaccine, how will we get it in arms the fastest? And that's what we're looking at. And the state actually is looking at us for that as well. They want 80% of that allocation you're given to be put in arms within a week. And that is our goal as well. We want 100% in arms as fast as we can, but as efficient. I'm sorry.
Yeah, anything else the public needs to know at this time?
We will, if you just keep monitoring the websites for information as far as signing up for vaccines, or what I mean is getting on their wait list. Listen to the radio, look at the paper. If you are on social media, you know, check those sites out as well. We try to update as often as we have new information available. You know, right now we're not always getting a whole lot of new information to put out there, but we're trying to get it out as soon as we can. There's a process that we have to follow in order to make all of this happen. And so we want to also be as safe as we can and make sure that those vaccines are going to where they need to be going most.
Cheryl, we appreciate you taking some time updating us on the vaccination process in Allamakee County. We thank you for all you're doing for the community, and hopefully this vaccination process will be done as quickly and as smoothly as possible, and we can get to the other side as fast as possible. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Darren.
Cheryl Darling-Mooney from Allamakee County Public Health. Our thanks to our guest on the program this morning, Decorah School Superintendent Mark Lane, Allamakee School Superintendent Jay Mathis, and Cheryl Darling-Mooney from Allamakee County Public Health about the Allamakee County COVID-19 vaccine rollout. Our town, as always, brought to you by Decorah Bank and Trust. And don't forget to go to the Rivers Facebook page. We will link up the YouTube videos each and every week for our town as well. Our thanks to our guest, our thanks to our sponsor, Decorah Bank and Trust, and our thanks to you for listening into another edition of Our Town. There will not be an Our Town program next week, because we'll have state wrestling on the air on 94.9 and 99.1 The River and AM 1240 KDEC beginning at 9 o'clock next Thursday morning. It'll be the opening round of the 1A session of the state wrestling tournament. So we will be back in 2 weeks, 2 weeks until our next Our Town appearance on 94.9 and 99.1 The River and AM 1240 KDC.